So today I want to talk about the most important step when you are finishing an oval rug. What is it that you absolutely have to do in order to be sure that it doesn't end up a ripply mess? Now, I covered in another video how to draw the oval, and that's a good foundation because if you've got the oval drawn right and it's square on the backing, yes, an oval needs to be square. It certainly starts out that way anyways. You will end up with a better product if you start out that way. So let's get started and I'll show you what the most critical step is. The first step is to mark off where you're going to cut. And I use that using my little finishing tool, which you can get free on my website with any order. All you got to do is ask for it, and I will be sure to include it. I'm making little dashes all the way around. Normally, you would make one dash on one side and then remove the measuring tool and simply draw in the ditch. And there is a lesson on my website on how to do that. And normally this piece would be steamed before I did this, but I was under time constraints, so this little piece is not steamed yet, and that'll become an issue later in the video, but for now, let's mark that area. And as promised, here is the most important step. We're going to do a row of stay stitching around the outside of this piece. Stitch it so that it is close to the line, but not over. What we're eventually going to do, as soon as I get this finished, like I did just now, we are going to cut off the backing right on the line, and we don't want to cut the stitching. This stitching is going to prevent the backing that is on the bias from stretching, and that's what causes your rugs to ripple. That stay stitching will hold it in place and not allow it to get any bigger. That is the most important step. But continue watching because I'll show you the rest of the steps to get to a finished edge. What we're going to do now is to simply cut off the edge. And I cut right on the line, careful not to cut into the stitching at all. So we've got the piece marked where to cut it off. We've got it stay stitched. Now what we're going to do is zigzag the edge, which is going to prevent it from unraveling. If you do not have a zigzag on your sewing machine, you can skip this step. What I would do is only cut off what you can finish, like for instance one side of a rug, rather than having it all out there, because the more you handle it, the more it's going to unravel. And I wanted to go through very carefully, particularly on the curves, so that it doesn't stretch them out at all. Ideally, I would be zigzagging right over the stay stitching if I made the stay stitching close enough to the edge. Sometimes I did, sometimes I didn't. But once you get that done, then we'll be ready for the next step, which is going to be basting it into place. The finish I'm going to do is a fold forward finish. So I'm folding it forward once, and I'm going to baste that into place. Once I get the first fold completely basted down, I'll fold it a second time, and that'll work just fine. Now I'm doing this on rug warp. If you're doing this on linen, linen is much flatter. It's much thinner. 2 folds of linen is not enough to support the outer fold of linen, so you'll have to add some cording. But for now, let's continue with this. And you can see that I'm sort of smushing that edge into place as I go. If this was a straight rug, I would be making big 3/4 of an inch stitches. But because this is a small oval, and quite frankly, the smaller the oval, the more difficult it is to finish. So I'm showing you the most difficult one because this is incredibly small. This isn't even big enough for a coaster, but it's going to be a sample in my teaching kit. So I'm making tight little stitches. If I need to, I'm even going back and doing like a back stitch just to get the thread in place to hold it so that the backing doesn't ripple. It lays relatively flat. And just keep using your fingers and molding it into place until you get it exactly where you need it to be. Once you are done with the first fold, then it's time to fold the edge down a second time. When I stitch that second edge down, I stitch it a little bit differently. Instead of a simple running stitch, I do a stitch that goes over the edge, and that holds it into place so it doesn't try to unfold on me. So pay attention to the different type of stitch that I use for this second pass. So I usually take a couple stitches in the same place to get that roll folded down the first time. And then it's just a matter of going down in between the loops and the roll, and then coming up in the middle of the roll and going back down. Now these are much, 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 much closer than they would ever be on a rectangular rug. And that's because I need to hold it so that each little piece is facing in the right direction. And if you notice, there really aren't any pleats. I'm able with my fingers to sort of massage that excess fabric and to get it into place. If you feel like a stitch isn't holding well enough, feel free to put extra stitch in, one right on top of the other. Sometimes will do the job. But just continue around the rest of the piece in the same manner. So what you just saw is me sewing down the edge and prepping it for the fold forward finish. You can find more information about this finish at cindygayrughooking.com/FF. Now, if you're a member of the rug hooking journey, there's much more detailed instructions inside the rug hooking journey. Simply go to the basics course and then find the section on finishing. Look for the bright red hearts, click on that link, and download the PDF. You might have noticed this little piece curling a little bit, and that's because I didn't go through the steaming process. So make sure you go through that. My instructions on cindygayrughooking.com/FF, this link right here, includes the steaming instructions. There's also instructions if you are a member of the rug hooking journey. Go to howtorughook.com, click on the dashboard and log in, and then page down to the basics course. Once you click on that link, look for the section on finishing. Look for the section where it has the fold forward finish. Click on that. There's a little tip video there, particularly about the corner, but click on this little link here to open the PDF. That PDF is quite a few pages long. It's got full instructions. You can punch holes in it, put it in a notebook, and keep it right next to your chair where you're working. To learn more about my courses, go to this webpage, howtorughook.com/courses. It'll list all the courses that are available on my website. You can pick and choose what works for you. For beginners, I recommend joining the rug hooking journey. It's the lowest price, particularly if you buy just for the month. You can upgrade to the yearly and save a ton of money at any time. Or the practical color planning course for rug hookers. After all, if you don't know where the colors go, it's hard to rug hook, right? So I would recommend starting with one of those two, and you can join the others at any time.